1936, you might be surprised by a name that's missing. But there was a reason.
The reason Cy Young wasn't elected in the first class to the Hall of Fame was a consequence of the selection rules.
He understood that he overlapped 1900, that he was almost as much a 19th century ball player as he was a 20th century ball player. Certainly a guy with the most wins had to be a little upset that he wasn't with the original class.
But Denton True Young only had to wait a year before he garnered the necessary votes.
Being inducted into the Hall of Fame meant a great deal for Cy Young's life. It was a kind of credentialing of him, and as a consequence of becoming an immortal.
Joining Young in the class of 37 were Nap Lajoie and Tris Speaker.
Mathewson and Young were the last of the 19th century pitchers. Speaker was the last of the 19th century outfielders. He played the style that everybody played before 1900.
Speaker might have been the extreme case, the guy who played the shallowest even among all his colleagues in that era. 450 career assists from the outfield. 450.
As for Knapp, well, he was the first ever American League Triple Crown winner back in 1901. The original plan was to have Hall of Fame elections every year. In 1938, only one man received the honor from the writers.
Alexander was an absolutely fantastic pitcher. At one point, 1915, 16, and 17, he won 30 or more games each season.
If you look at those first four pitchers elected, it's not surprising that those are the first four people in terms of most wins all time in the history of the major leagues.
In 1939, the Scribes brought three more into the fold: George Sisler, Willie Keeler, and Eddie Collins. Collins was a career .333 hitter, a driving force on 4 championship teams, and a brilliant baseball mind to boot.
The most impressive thing about Eddie Collins' playing career was his consistency. Not only was he a top baseball hitter, he was on base frequently. He would take the extra base. Eddie Collins' overall reaction was one of awe that he would become part of this group of ball players that he had either played with or admired for so long.
Willie Keeler is perhaps most famous for one of the phrases that he uttered as a player, and that was, "I hit 'em where they ain't." His career .345 average is also one of the highest all time, and he had 7 seasons in which he batted over .350.
George Sisler was one of the top 2 or 3 players in all of baseball. In the very early 1920s, George Sisler's reaction to his induction into the Hall of Fame was kind of interesting. He was a part owner of a sporting goods store in St. Louis. He was at the store stocking ice skates when he learned of the news, and he was obviously very excited.
As the list of Hall of Famers grew, Cleveland continued to gather artifacts from each era, including one that will never be matched.
Cy Young was very responsible here for being one of the first to come forward with some piece of memorabilia, his baseball from his 500th win.
Young also donated a painting of himself that had been done by Abbott Thayer of New Hampshire. Other players, too, began to come forward with their own mementos.
When they found out what was going on, everybody was very willing to donate something.
Lajoie followed suit soon after, and in fact, the next year, when Ty Cobb found out that these players had donated these items, he quickly donated an entire uniform.
The Hall of Fame's collection continued to grow, and people throughout the nation began to take notice, thanks in part to some help from the U.S. government.
As time went on, the ball really gets rolling here and picks up steam, and what started out as a little museum in Cooperstown, New York was pretty soon becoming, oh my, this grand scheme, and the whole country was finding out about it.
Prior to 1939, there had never been an American stamp dedicated to any sports figure or sporting event, and so it was big news when the Postmaster General announced in February of that year that there would be a special baseball centennial stamp. This stamp had first been proposed in 1937 by the Cooperstown Chamber of Commerce, quickly supported by the local stamp club, and then endorsed by Fort Frick at the National League office and forwarded on to the Postmaster General.
Having come this far, one major decision remained.
Well, naturally, the question is, what's going to be on the stamp? Shouldn't it be a picture of someone? How about the guy who invented the game, Abner Doubleday? Oh dear, there was a man by the name of Cartwright, Alexander Cartwright, who his family said was really responsible for originating the game. And so what they picked was sort of a generic scene of baseball being played by young boys.
With a stamp of approval from the government, an ever-growing collection of artifacts, and 4 classes of Hall of Famers waiting for a ceremony in 1939.
The game's youngest stars are on the rise, but who has what it takes to shine in the show? Hear the best analysts in baseball break down the game's future top talent. MLB Network's Top 100 Prospects, Thursday 7 Eastern on MLB Network.
Welcome to the next level. This is the Lexus NX with intuitive tech.
Watch for traffic.
And our most advanced safety system ever.
Ever wonder why Kit Kats are so delightfully crispy? There's your answer. 1, 2, 3. Tasty wafers covered in creamy milk chocolate. Isn't it nice wafers are having their moment? Have a break. Have a Kit Kat. Add mint to the moment with Mint Duos.
I was born here, I'm from here, and I'm never leaving here. I'm a New York hotel. Yeah, I'm tall. 563 feet, 2 inches. I'm on top of the world. I'm looking for someone who needs a weekend in the city, who likes being in the middle of it all. You hungry? I know a place, and a few others nearby. It's the city that never sleeps. But hey, if you need a last-minute spot, I got you covered.
After Advil.
Feeling better?
On top of the world!
Before Advil. Advil targets pain at the source of inflammation. When pain comes for you, come back fast with Advil liquid gels.
From Cooperstown, New York, the National Broadcasting Company brings you the Baseball Centennial Ceremonies, which officially dedicate the National Baseball Museum and the Baseball Hall of Fame.
It was called the Cavalcade of Baseball on June 12, 1939. They had stopped running a train there to Cooperstown, but for this occasion, they cut down the weeds between the tracks there, and they brought a new train in. Oh, how would you have loved to have been on this train?
The train came from New York City. It was called the Cooperstown Special, and it featured 8 Pullman cars and had the greatest players in baseball history on it. Not only the Hall of Famers that were getting inducted, but also the active players were coming in, as well as baseball dignitaries like the commissioner and the presidents of the league.
I remember the guys walked down from the train, and my brother carried Babe Ruth's suitcase down Main Street, and the children followed him like the Pied Piper of Hamelin. He just attracted the children.
The village was abuzz with excitement, and as part of the festivities, the Postmaster General unveiled the Cavalcade of Baseball stamp commemorating the 100th anniversary of the game.
This was the first day issue for the stamps, and everybody wanted to get one. James Farley, the Postmaster General, was there, and he was issuing the first stamp to Commissioner Landis.
Commissioner Landis turned around and donated that to the Baseball Museum, which was right across the street.
This is baseball's National Museum, where the gloves, bats, uniforms, and other treasured trophies of famous players will be preserved along with their records.
For the first time, we're saying that the history of the game means something, that we can begin to enshrine and codify not just the importance of the game specifically, but of individuals that we care about.
The picturesque village of Cooperstown stands by to hear the words of the immortals of baseball.
I think it was a little bit of a shock how big this thing went over.
A huge success, 5 years after Stephen Clark and Alexander Cleland had put the plan in motion.
Probably some 15,000 visitors lined the streets here in Cooperstown. And what really tied everything together beautifully was that baseball, first and foremost, recognized this as a celebration of their game.
And as baseball fans flooded the normally sleepy streets of Cooperstown, the rest of the nation listened in.
Thousands of persons have come from the four corners of this country to be here today to rub elbows with these immortals of baseball.
The first induction was incredibly special. You had 11 living inductees, 25 overall Hall of Famers, constituting 4 classes, 1936, 37, 38, and 39.
4 classes representing the greatest collection of baseball talent ever assembled.
You look at that group of players and it puts tingles up your spine. When you look back at that conglomeration of the first 4 classes together, which is something, of course, that is very unique and you really never see again. It's one of those things that really shows you who the greatest icons in the game truly were.
I mean, you were really looking at the original immortals there that day, and that must have been something really special.
As the crowd swelled, the immortals gathered for a photo that has become almost as legendary as the players who were in it. Pictured were 10 of the 11 living inductees. The only one missing was Ty Cobb, and there was plenty of speculation regarding his absence.
Reports vary. He, at various times, said he was sick. He had contacted ptomaine poisoning in nearby Utica on his way to Cooperstown, was hospitalized and arrived late. Other reports say he was on his way but couldn't get in. Nobody recognized him as he was arriving, so he had trouble getting into the ceremony.
Cobb missed the photo op but arrived in time to join his contemporaries for the dedication by Commissioner Landis.
To the 13 pioneers who were the moving spirits of the game in its infancy, and to the 12 players who've been nominated to the Hall of Fame by the Baseball Writers Association, we pay tribute, just tribute. And I think all these immortals of baseball would agree with me to dedicate this museum to all Americans, to lovers of good sportsmanship, healthy body, keen mind, for those are the principles of baseball.
Following the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum was declared officially open.
So there is the Pantheon. There's our Olympus. There are our gods, the immortals of baseball, who do actually enjoy a kind of immortality.
But before they were welcomed into that most exclusive fraternity, one of the non-player inductees, the venerable Connie Mack, was the first to address the crowd.
I feel greatly honored in being here today with the other great stars of baseball and with all of those who have taken part in promoting the interest of baseball. And I am quite positive that in the years to come, that we can look forward to our game still progressing.
One by one, the Hall of Famers took to the microphone.
The great Ty Cobb.
Well, this is a great day in my life. I'm very happy to be here, and I feel greatly honored, the privilege of being here.
Throughout the speeches, there was a distinct sense of just how humbled and honored these men were to be so recognized.
I'm not going to take up a great deal of time. Connie Mack really made a speech for all of us. I'm very happy indeed to have been chosen by the sports writers as a member of this great Hall of Fame. Our time is very limited, so I'm going to thank you again and let someone else come on. Thank you.
When Cy Young gave his short speech, he made essentially 3 points. That he was glad to be there, that he was glad baseball was prospering, and that he hoped and expected that it would continue to be an important game for the next 100 years.
I'm glad to be here today in honor of this statuary, this Hall of Fame. Glad that I was able to go through 22-odd years and do what I did and to have my name on the record.
The last man to speak was also the most celebrated.
He was the most recognizable guy of anybody. And, of course, he stands up and the crowd goes crazy.
Babe Ruth, the Bambino!
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I know the old boys back in there. We were just talking it over. Some have been here long before my time. They got on it, and I worked hard, I got on it. And I hope that the coming generation, the young boys today, that they'll work hard and also be on it. And as my old friend Cy Young says, I hope it goes another 100 years, and the next 100 years will be the greatest. And I'm surely glad, and it's a pleasure for me to come up here and be picked also on the Hall of Fame. Thank you.
The speeches had concluded, but there'd be plenty more to celebrate on this unforgettable June day in 1939.
It may be the off-season, but there's no off